Welcome to the Dave Palmer Show.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palmer Show. And with me in this episode, I have the co-founder of Kitcaster, a podcast booking agency that celebrates great conversations, and Wildcast, a SaaS advertising platform for podcasts.
Dave, how you doing? Thanks for having me. It's not Kickstarter. I wish it was. It's Kitcaster.
Kitcaster. Yeah,
Kitcaster.
sorry about that. That's my dyslexia. My dyslexia is sort of
oh no, it's cool, man.
Getting confused with words. So Kitcaster. Sorry about it. And if I say it again, Ryan's going to give me a kick. So Ryan Estes, is it?
Estes, yeah.
Estes. Yeah. Welcome to the Dave Palmer Show.
It's an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you being here, Ryan. As I say, I have actually used your agency as well. Some great guests have come across my podcast show as well. With all 400 episodes, I'm sure I've come across a lot of agents, but I do remember Kitcaster.
Incredible. 424 episodes. Congratulations.
430 something, actually. 430 something now. So
pardon me.
Excellent. Well, listen, what I'm also interested in is because I'm on a mindfulness app as well, doing some solo audio as well as coaching, one-on-one coaching, etc. As a life coach, and so doing some mindfulness stuff. But I see you was also into Buddhism, and you're known as the American Buddhist entrepreneur. Is that right?
Yeah, what I've been doing is really trying to figure out, to me, what it means to be a Buddhist. And I suppose I make a differentiation with American Buddhists because I think we have our own flavor over here and something to kind of contribute to the last 2,500 years of Buddhist instruction and culture. So, right. Buddhism to me is it's not something you believe, it's rather something that you do. So, with kind of the mindfulness work that you're doing, that becomes like a really critical and kind of central methodology to being a Buddhist. At least how it ends up landing with me. Buddhism is also something that's very large and has many different schools of thought and many different applications. There's religious applications where it's much more moral ethic based. And then there's, obviously contemplative monastic life as well. So being a householder and just being kind of a family man, a businessman, figuring out how to kind of use Buddhist principles to enrich my life is kind of what I'm really interested in right now.
Right, that's great. That's great stuff. And what would you say is the difference between American Buddhism and traditional Buddhism then? Obviously I'm using not traditional or American Buddhism. I know what Buddhism is, and I respect the religion very well, indeed. But for meditation, it's kind of the westernized version. Is that American Buddhism or?
I think American Buddhism is just like regular Buddhism, only a little bit more overweight. I think that's kind of how it works. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Okay.
No,
so it's a heavyweight.
I don't think there's any official distinctions. But to me, when I'm starting to look at like what is some of the character of American Buddhism, because it's so new here, so we have, maybe 60, 70 years, if we really start pushing back, that we had masters coming here and teach. We have enthusiastic students that are ready to learn. So, what is American Buddhism? Well, I think it also has to do with not only the lineage and the kind of the scriptures and everything like that, which are important, the practices, obviously, but also what is, the West and America's contribution to Buddhism. And I think we've made a couple. One is just kind of applying kind of scientific rigor to the consciousness studies and some of just kind of bringing science into Buddhism, which I think has been really interesting. And there's a lot of really interested published studies about the benefits of certain practices, which is kind of ironic because there's kind of some teachings of, particularly around meditation, that if you're getting into it for some self-improvement, you're really kind of missing the point. But nonetheless, part of them, part of being American is like, well, if I'm putting some in, I got to get some out. So that's kind of one attribute. I think the other thing that American Buddhism is, it's also has kind of some roots in psychotherapy, and the communities really overlap pretty extraordinarily. I mean, particularly around, therapists using different kind of mindfulness tactics in their therapies. I think that's an important kind of contribution. And then also just the origin story, really, of how Buddhism kind of took roots here, which is really just a bunch of crazy hippies blowing their mind on acid and seeing that there's other realms of consciousness available to them. And so, these guys, classically went to India and found gurus and started cults and God knows what, but a part of that was many of them found like refuge in this religion, for lack of a better word. I mean, it's a unique religion because, again, I mean, if you get to the roots of it, there's nothing to believe, So I think kind of those three components kind of start to define and give American Buddhism its shape. There is no, dogma about what it is, but like kind of discovering that, I think, is helpful. Particularly because, with anything new, let's say like Buddhism is new to America, then you have certain kind of purity testing and gatekeepers, which are to say, hey, you're an outsider looking in. Like, this is, if you're here, you're a tourist, which is kind of a cynical perspective. But I think probably everybody that is kind of like giving this some serious thought will have kind of that, that imposter syndrome, like, hey, maybe I don't belong here. And I just don't think that's true. I think that Americans have a lot to offer, the kind of the pantheon of Buddhist practice.
Yeah, no, I mean, I knew it was kind of a big thing in Hollywood. Probably still is, actually, Buddhism and taking on that kind of practice. And I know Madonna and a few other big names as well,
Oh yeah, it's very chic.
Of it,
Who was the first one? Richard Gere.
Oh, Richard
Gere. Whoa,
okay.
Richard Gere's a Buddhist, and he meets with the Dalai Lama. Cool,
Yeah.
The Beastie Boys.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we got a few in the UK as well. A few comedians and actors as well. That's the same thing. So Dalai Lama's been over here as well, actually, which it's not a bad thing. he's
no, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
he's wonderful.
Yeah.
You touched on something too that I think there is a cachet, kind of like a cultural coolness about Buddhism, and a mystique, which I think is also cool, but which also starts to lend itself to a little bit of virtue signaling. That if you're like, hey, I'm cool, I'm with Madonna because I like, which is just part of it, and I think definitely a part of like American Buddhism. It's like, I'm a Buddhist because I have a salt and pepper ponytail, a thumb ring, and Birkenstocks. So I'm a Buddhist. There's like there's kind of like a presentation, which is, a part of everything. But you're right. There is kind of like a cultural coolness about Buddhism. And I think that's largely because its philosophy is built in kindness, and there's not, it's kind of sweet at its core. So it doesn't have kind of the same aspects and principles, or maybe just the same historical like violence that comes from other religions. Not that other religions are violent, but certainly they've been used in ways perhaps more aggressively than states that are largely based in Buddhism.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to move on more into your own business that you run, Kitcaster, and the new one that's coming up, Wildcast, or that's already launched. But you mentioned earlier about building a business based on Buddhist principles. Is that how you built these business? I mean, tell us your journey about your business life before we move on to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kitcaster is a podcast booking agency. We work largely with funded startup founders, entrepreneurs with exits, C-suite executives, and we book those people on the world's top podcasts. like this one. Like
Yeah.
you said, we've booked some of our clients on your show, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
Thanks. Yeah.
Um, and this is probably, I don't know, I've had probably a half dozen failed ventures and that things that have gone to different success. This is probably, project 7 or 8. And so as I've kind of grown up, AKA gotten old, I've been able to like be more intentional about how I want to put together a project. Our co-founder, Brandy Whalen, who's absolutely phenomenal person and also like very kind of like emotionally attuned to like, you know what, if we're going to create an agency, this is a kind of a high touch white glove agency. We're going to need to have people, we're going to have to, the way we grow is we hire people, so we're at probably 24, 25 folks working for us now. And it becomes very clear that like now you have to have a culture and you have to like create opportunities for people to be successful. You have to create opportunities for people to grow personally and professionally. And so doing that's one thing, but how you do that was really interesting to us. So if you're looking at Buddhist principles, and Buddhism loves lists, and they have lists of lists, and there's a lot of rules if you get down to it. But it can be kind of simplified from the Dalai Lama himself. It says it's a religion of kindness, so that being a structural kind of organization of like, okay, we need to create opportunities to express kindness in, with our staff, with podcast hosts, with the audiences, with everybody that we're working with. What does it mean to kind of bring kindness into the workspace? And obviously that's going to be a certain like kind of a flavor in the air and a culture, right? But it's also, again, I'm a big fan of like something you do. So how do we do kindness, and that comes out in various ways. And one thing that I think is really unique about Kitcaster is we do something very simple just called Hey Pal, which is just a little postcard. And when we have the opportunity, somebody that does something for somebody else, then they just write a little Hey Pal card like, hey Dave, love being on the podcast. You're doing a great job, man. I really appreciate you. And just so we're kind of always exchanging these Hey Pal cards, and also using that as an opportunity for folks that work remote, that we can kind of touch them with something physical, which I think is kind of like grounding and nice, because everybody likes to get a nice little card. And, since, we're sitting behind glowing rectangles all the time, having something physical in your hand feels good too.
Yeah. I'll do I've actually, well, self-published, but it's published a book, I suppose, as well as doing my coaching in it. And it's nice to have that physical book rather than just doing digital or audio only. But they're good as well to do audio and digital. Obviously, podcasts and audio books are very popular these days. That some people like to have a physical thing in their hand still, don't they? Really, it's nice
scribble in the margins and do some doodles,
Well, for me, it's giving a signed copy at, little speaking engagements and stuff like that, so it's nice to have that little physical thing there. So I suppose similar kind of concepts. But anyway, okay, well, let's move on then to the birth of Kitcaster. How did you get around to doing that? I mean, was you a podcaster at the beginning yourself, or tell us about your journey?
You bet. I've been a podcaster, I think, since 2008. I was pretty new to the form, been doing it forever. I had a podcast called the Denver Business Podcast.
Right.
And that's how I met Brandy Whalen. And she would bring her clients onto my show. She was kind of the original podcast booking agent.
Okay.
And so we kind of clicked, so we were getting coffee and we're just like, hey, let's work on a project, and so we started throwing ideas around, and kind of that's where Kitcaster was kind of birthed. So we're like, yeah, booking agency for startups sounds really cool. So we kind of built a pilot program and launched it, and it took off almost immediately. So at that point we're like, okay, well, let's do this. And so Kitcaster was born September of 2019. Of course, we all got locked down in March 2020. With this little baby fledgling business out there, like, what are we going to do with this service thing? But it turned out that like people really went in on podcasting while we're all in lockdown. It gave people some connection. Maybe you found that too, of like,
I did, like, absolutely.
It's like, okay, maybe it's the end of the world. Well, let's have a podcast about it. So yeah, that's kind of the origin story. What we're getting really excited for now, both Brandy and I are also co-founders of Wildcast. And Wildcast, we're getting ready to relaunch Wildcast as a premier podcast advertising platform. So
now,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I saw SaaS advertising platform. So what is SaaS before we go on about the
You bet.
advertising?
I like how you say it too. SaaS.
Okay.
I'm just like SaaS.
Yeah.
But SaaS. I'm going to say it like that from now on.
All right. That sounds a bit like a coronavirus or something.
SaaS.
Sounds too much like coronavirus. So stick to your one. It sounds more sassy.
Okay. There it is. Yeah. Sauce is what I put on top of my sandwich. Extra sauce.
There you go.
So
anyway,
yeah, SaaS is a acronym. So SaaS, which is software as a service or software as a subscription. They can kind of be used intermediarily. So that's basically just to say this is an online dashboard where what we're going to do is create the world's best host-read ad podcast advertising platform. And specifically, we're going to be working with podcasts that are in the business, B2B, SaaS, and tech space, and the brands that align with them. Because really, if you're talking about podcast advertising, the most important thing is relevancy. In podcast categories like tech, SaaS, you're not going to have gigantic audiences in the way that you'll have kind of like entertainment shows that are run by entertainers. Rather, you're going to have very niche shows. And so the value of the audiences that are finding benefit from, let's say, like a data compliant show. This is very dry material, but unless you're into data compliance, and then this is a very important show for you. So there may be, 10,000 people that listen to that show. But the value of them is very high, particularly for brands that are in data compliance. So that's what we're setting out to do, is to really match brands to audiences that are really looking for solutions.
Yeah. And what can you tell me about creating profits for podcast hosts like myself, for example?
Well, that's going to be Wildcast.
Yes.
And Dave, we would love to have you over there. So, basically what the platform will do is give podcasts an opportunity to register. They're going to register their podcast. It happens really automatically. And then they're going to report on information about their audience. So that it's like attributes, outcomes, categories, a lot of different, maybe 100 different attributes for their show and their audience. So as advertisers come in, we're able to algorithmically match the relevance of the podcast to a brand that is really looking for those kind of outcomes. So essentially then podcast host gets emailed and says, hey, Dave, we have a brand that is really excited about advertising on your podcast. You accept it. And then essentially, let's imagine it's Adobe.
Yeah.
At that point, you just go to the platform, you get the creative, and then before your podcast and a pre-roll, you're like, hey, this podcast brought to you by Adobe. Everybody knows what Photoshop is. Go pick it up. And then you're then compensated for that. So on the podcast side, there's opportunities to monetize your podcast with our platform. On the brand side, it's your opportunity to absolutely box out the competition and find open audience when they're most likely to make a purchase.
Right, I see. When you say open audience to make a purchase, you mean advertisers or audience, as in the audience, that listeners and downloaders?
Exactly. Like your audience. So if I'm listening to your podcast and Dave's like, and the audience is like, oh, Dave's sponsored by Adobe, that's awesome. Maybe I'll go check that out. And then they'll go, and that would be particularly relevant. Let's say if this was a graphic design podcast, right? Or like a photographer podcast. Then it's like, oh, naturally there's like a good fit. So that's what we're looking to do, is create an absolute perfect match within relevance with a brand who's advertising, the host that is representing the brand as an advertiser, and the audience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know there's obviously podcast booking agency now is kind of like overtaken or being merged in with PR agencies. You know, it's big business now, isn't it? Really, it's like the thing now for people, really, that not just PR. You know,
Yeah, a podcast booking agency. Who thought that would be a job?
I know. Now it's a big business, and it's, as I say, that, you know, public relations is really a big thing for that, and also advertising. You know, having podcast advertising platforms like yourself now is huge, big business as well. You know, that is such a transformation over the last two or so years, probably particularly during the pandemic.
Yeah, that was a big element. And plus, I think podcast is just still booming. I mean, in the States, you know, it kind of keeps going, but like internationally, like podcasting really hasn't even started yet. You know, I think UK has like a great podcasting community. Australia has a big podcasting community. Brazil is starting to turn the corner, but there's so much opportunity all over the place. I mean, particularly Latin America. I mean, podcasting is just still in its infancy, you know, which is really exciting, because obviously I'm pretty bullish on podcasting.
You certainly can say, with the way the economic situation's gone, with all that's going on in the world, you can be bullish with this, well, anything techie really, but obviously technology and Facebook and everything else, Netflix hasn't really suffered that much, have they, really?
Yeah, no one's crying for Facebook.
not really, no. Excellent. Well, I mean, Wildcast and Kitcaster, you know, very good, great catchy names as well. So you know, I'm really looking forward to your business sort of really thriving amongst, you know, all the kind of growth that's going there with that side of the business, you know, that's growing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. How can people find out more about Kitcaster and Wildcast? I mean, as I said, I came across it anyway, you know, with doing what I'm doing, and, you know, just suddenly getting discovered and then discovering other people. But for the people listening and don't know much about how to discover it, where can they find you and also find out more about Wildcast?
Absolutely. Great place for Wildcast is gowildcast.com. You can check out some information there. Like I said, we'll be relaunching shortly, depending on when this airs. And then for Kitcaster, you can just go to kitcaster.com or Google both, and you should be able to find us pretty easily. If anybody's interested in reaching out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's kind of the only social media I check. But I'd love to connect with anybody who wants to talk anything about podcasting, or if you're in podcasting, about opportunities to monetize your show. Happy to talk about that as well.
So, and I'll want to jump in a conversation with you there too. So I'll probably check out Wildcast anytime soon as well myself. So in the meantime, Ryan, it's been really great. You've been really great on my show, and you know, this is a really great pleasure having you here. Actually, you know. It's
my pleasure. Absolutely. It's great to meet you, and I love what you're doing. You know, when I see somebody like you, 430 episodes in, I just love it, because I love podcasting so much, and what it's given me and my family, but also, you know, podcasters like you is really like how we're able to do what we do, which is, you know, celebrate good conversation at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Ryan, for that. Thanks a lot. And it's great what you're doing as well. So please keep doing what you're doing as well. So pleasure having you on the show. And thanks a lot for coming and sharing all this with my audience today.
You bet. Thanks so much, Dave.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening. And remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. Or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.